Hi everybody, my name is Mark Newman. I'm Chief Analyst at TM Forum, and I'm delighted to be here today with Rohit Maheshwari. And Rohit is Head of Strategy Products at Subex. And Subex, I'm sure as you know, is a digital trust company helping telecoms operators to build digital trust, to build trust in digital ecosystems. So welcome, Rohit.
Thank you, Mark.
And so we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the things that telcos can do around AI-driven automation. But I think it'd be useful for me just to give a broader context to where I see telcos today in their use of analytics and analytics-based solutions in their business. And so this is a topic which has been creeping up on me over the last few years, and I spent increasing times looking at it. And my observation would be that when we look at the telco business, we hear it said regularly, and it's absolutely true, that telcos have a massive amount of data coming to them. The question is, how do they bring that together and use it dynamically? And so I think it's fair to say that when you look at most telcos today, they have a fairly siloed approach to that data. So you might well have a data and analytics strategy within, for example, the customer experience function, where they're collecting data that's been generated from the customer experience. You've probably also got a very strong analytics and data strategy around the network as well, and network operations. But that network data is used to make the network more efficient. It's used just within that single silo. And I think when we think about the future capabilities of telco, in many ways it's blending those data across different parts of their business and building new capabilities. And I think in order to do this, telcos have tended to be fairly use case centric in how they think about data. But increasingly, I think as we think about what they need to do to become, to truly exploit that value, they need to think about enablement capabilities and putting in place some stronger rules around data models, around governance. Now, if telcos can get this right, I think we're generally looking at a paradigm shift for telcos. If telcos can truly exploit their data, that can be the next stage in their evolution, both in terms of efficiency around automation, using automation to drive agility, and using AI and automation to drive a stronger customer experience. So the potential is there, the potential is huge, it's about getting there. So enough from me. Maybe if I could just turn to you, Rohit. I mean, what are your thoughts again around that, where we are today in terms of telcos' use of data analytics and embracing AI?
Sure, thanks, Mark. I think you are a keen observer of the industry. So you're spot on with some of your thoughts. Let me tell you the story of analytics in telcos as I have personally seen evolve in over 2 decades. When I started my career, we at Subex applied analytics in fraud management, for instance. Fraud used to be often cited as cost of doing business, and it used to be hovering around 7 to 10% of overall revenue. We started by analyzing behavior in near real time on a per consumer basis, as they call it today, precision analytics. This analysis used to typically consist of about 10 to 15 voice calls over a day, or a few SMSs customer made on a daily basis. And it included invoices and payments on a monthly basis. Fraud controls used to have at best 2 or 3 variables, right? All of this today sounds extremely, how do I say, nascent, rudimentary. Contrast this with today. Telcos are, like you mentioned, gathering massive amounts of behavior data. Analytics has really become sophisticated, and we are talking about analyzing user behavior on several different features, oftentimes running to hundreds of features across voice, data, applications, payment transactions, communities and demographics, geolocation, and so on and so forth, right? So, and thanks to efforts of fraud management systems of today, telco fraud is down to decimal percentage point of revenue. Seems like we are doing great. Unfortunately, the true potential of telco decision analytics hasn't yet been realized. While I gave you one specific example, you're spot on. Uh, Decision analytics continues to exist in silos. Data continues to exist in silos, right? 5G is literally ushering in uh, a dawn of inventions, Mark. 5G is a tremendous opportunity for telcos to win the digital race. And this cannot happen without telcos acing the art and science of AI-driven data analytics. I'm not suggesting for the moment that telcos do not understand the value of AI-driven decision analytics, but the sheer abundance of data, I like to call it the petabyte terror, and the lack of AI services and skills, the siloed nature of data are all, can make it extremely overwhelming. So
Thank you.
my view, there are three things I would suggest telcos should focus on. Number one, shift gears from scattered, sporadic AI experimentation for decision analytics to a strategic view of transforming all decision analytics in an organization by leveraging AI. This has to be, as you can imagine, a top-down CXO-driven imperative. It is clear that across the value chain, telcos can benefit either in terms of uplift of revenue or reduction of cost, and in many cases, both. Second point, rethink tech strategy. I think cloud for elasticity, open source for agility is absolutely necessary. And with 5G and the promises of many new use cases, Mark, telco architecture is changing, which I believe will lend itself to reimagining decision analytics. And number three, ensure AI influenced services from speech to forecasting to regression to clustering to deep learning, vision, etc., are available. Right, that's the only way for telcos to attract great quality data science talent. So the truth is, across value chain, there is tremendous telcos can do to benefit, and I believe we are only getting started.
That's interesting. So you've built a very strong case for a CXO-driven top-down view of enabling AI capabilities, but are there specific use cases that we can think about where telcos can leverage automated AI-driven analytics?
Well, Mark, I believe there is no function in telco which will remain untouched by AI-driven analytics, right? Be it sales and marketing with its efforts to hyper-personalize. Take, for instance, 5G. One of the classic use cases, one of the most prominent use cases, I should say, with 5G and consumers is that around how do you engage fans for a sporting event or for a concert, etc. When you really need to identify who should you be targeting point in time AR VR content for engagement, right? So that's a classic example of hyper personalization as an event is occurring based on where the fan is, etc. Right? When a telco wants to answer a complex strategic question, in the past it might have been possible to get a response in a couple of months. That may not be good enough in a world where competition is accelerating. I believe with 5G and the B2B2X nature of 5G, there is definitely new competition which telcos will have to face up to. And one of the biggest advantages of an automated data-driven AI system is the ability to answer strategic questions, not in months, but quickly. I'm talking here in hours, if not less. So I believe across the value chain, whether it is sales and marketing, whether it is network operations, whether it is support systems, like human resource, like the CFO organization, like business assurance, like risk management, absolutely every function has more than a handful of use cases where you can apply AI-driven analytics.
So that's a very exciting vision for the potential of AI. I mean, is it ever going to replace human intelligence?
Well, As a product company and having built HyperSense augmented analytics platform, um, I I definitely wouldn't recommend that we are talking about replacing humans with data science. I would say to my customers, bring your business acumen and I'll show you magic happen. Let's be honest, data science teams can only build models with miraculous capabilities, but it's unlikely to solve highly specific business problems on their own. Data engineers and data scientists may not understand subtleties of what to look for. And that's why it is critical to pair them with domain experts, with business critical thinking, with people who really understand the on the ground business, right? Who understand how to interpret the output of analytics, understand local subtleties, understand cultural nuances to avoid incorrect conclusions. I think, yeah, go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I mean, when you have these discussions with customers, potential customers, to what extent do issues around privacy, ethics, transparency, to what extent do they become obstacles to overcome? And do you think telcos know exactly what those issues are, or they're just uncovering them as they start to use AI-driven solutions?
I think as you compare to hyperscalers, telcos may not have been first off the block in terms of using data for, let's say, business benefit as well. So there is a lot telcos can learn from hyperscalers. I think the utility of data versus the right to personal privacy is one of the biggest balancing act today's digital society faces. Right, there is absolutely no two ways about it. There is enormous value in using personal data, very much the kind of personal data that resides in the telco network today, for many different use cases. Right, a great example was contact tracing that was possible. Right, similarly, there are a number of examples on leveraging mobile usage and payments behavior for assessing credit worthiness of the underbanked. But we must recognize people have legitimate desire not to be tracked. So my thought is that companies working on personal data need to focus on very high standards of cyber security and work with consent first principle, right? My belief is platforms which enable AI in analytics, I mean, HyperSense, for instance, we take security extremely seriously, and we believe a consent first architecture for data monetization is extremely important.
It's interesting when you have a conversation with telcos about their use of data and the perceptions of their customers about how they use data. They talk about maybe having a different approach or building a different relationship compared with hyperscalers. And they often talk about, maybe they think that there's more trust from their customers. I mean, do you buy that argument, and do you see that coming from telcos?
I think so. I mean, in a very paradoxical way, telcos haven't really been known to be exploiting consumer data for monetization without content. And there is a very high trust relationship between telcos and consumers. But as we start opening up telcos, right, with 5G, we are really looking at a very open ecosystem that telcos would transform to. I think it will become important that data privacy and security remains on top of mind as telcos build new use cases and new products, right? Mark, in the previous question, you also spoke about AI ethics and transparency, right? So let me answer that point. I think, in my opinion, ethics and transparency will become non-negotiable. In fact, there are around about 300 different regulations coming around the globe, addressing AI in general, of which nearly 70 to 80 are around ethics, right? Let's acknowledge where there are people, inevitably there will be bias, right? Awareness alone is unlikely to solve the problem, but is a necessary step. So I believe a well-rounded solution lies in AI platforms dynamically assessing AI models and datasets with respect to bias, fairness, and governance, and also guide users towards remediation. So I think a lot of difficult questions will have to be answered by technology as much by people.
And you touched there on governance, and I sense that's an area where it's still an emerging area for telcos, and I think they probably haven't got governance right currently, but they're aware they need to get it right. So do you sense they know what they need to do, or they're still trying to discover what they need to do around governance?
I think it's a journey. I would say I do not think it is fair to expect all the answers to be known on day one. But there is enough we can learn, we can observe and learn from telcos who have taken the lead and set the standards. Also from other digital natives, Mark. I think as far as transparency is concerned, uh, governance is concerned, being able to produce more explainable models while maintaining a high level of performance accuracy, being able to enable users to understand and appropriately trust the output of AI models is something which tech needs to do, right? The tech needs to tell the user, hey, why is a certain result being given by a certain model? There is this challenge of black box. So we need to make sure it's no more black box. And that's the job of tech. That's where, for instance, with HyperSense and its explainable AI capabilities, we are trying to address the issue, Mark. But definitely you're spot on. Governance is a journey. I think bodies like TM Forum, yourself at TMF Forum, and your efforts at bringing telcos together, vendors like us together, and then probably, trying to address this question of, governance, transparency, and ethics, perhaps is something we should all commit to.
Yes, I know it's a big theme for us at the moment, data governance, right? So and as you were speaking, I was thinking, we're talking here about AI-driven data analytics, but analytics is not something new for telco. Telco has been investing in analytics for 10 years or more, and they've invested in existing solutions. So as telcos think about how to progress from their current investments into AI-driven analytics, to what extent do they need to reinvest and build new things rather than building on what they have already?
Spot on, Mark. I think it will be unfair to expect telcos to just rip their existing systems and plumbing apart and replace it. I think what's important is they look at solutions which are modular, but at the same time extremely cohesive and easy to integrate. With HyperSense, for instance, we have broken the whole journey of data to AI output, right, into different capabilities, if you will. Each capability is turned into a studio or a module, and enterprise customers, telcos, have the possibility of choosing, retaining existing tools in conjunction, in combination with what's available in HyperSense. So I totally and firmly believe that if you are a brownfield, most likely your journey into adopting AI-driven analytics will be one where you will have a transition period, a period where existing systems will have to coexist with new tech. I also believe there are systems which are there on premise, and as you transform for scalability and elasticity, you would want to turn to cloud native solutions. So that's where hybrid, deployments will become relevant. I definitely see there could be operators who are nimble enough, for example, to let the existing analytics system be and start transformation by deploying a solution in a small area, but making sure they have the long-term vision of expanding it, covering all different use cases. So there are many different paths and journeys to this transformation. I think as a technology vendor, it's important for us to acknowledge this and support modularity, support hybrid deployments, a combination of on-premise and cloud deployments, and support flexibility of starting small and then expanding to multiple use cases. Mark.
Interesting. And as you look at the industry today, and I'm sure in your role you're speaking to operators, customers, potential customers, and we think about where are we today on this journey towards AI-driven analytics. If 1 is the start of the journey and 10 is the end of the journey, where would you say we are today as an industry?
As industry as a whole, I think we are only getting started, Mark. I think the true inflection point is the fact that digitalization is intensifying, right? 5G transformation is just about gaining speed. I think we are just about having completed a round of, let's say, consolidation of big data stack in the last 3 to 4 years. We are now embarking on a new journey where 5G, cloud transformation, and AI, the 3 key pillars of analytics of the future, are all coming together. So to me, we are just about getting started.
And when I think about telcos talking about their investments in AI, often we associate that with the tier 1s, with the really big operators. But is it your vision that any operator can take an AI-driven approach, or is it just for the ones prepared to invest in it and to bring in their own skills, for example?
So great question, Mark. I believe mobile operators embarking on 5G transformation, the leaders, if you will, definitely are operators who will want to invest in something like this. I believe mobile operators doing cloud transformation. And as you can imagine, cloud transformation is no more about optimization. Cloud transformation is more in terms of being able to innovate. It's about agility. It's about accessing new tech. I think mobile operators embarking on cloud transformation journey are definitely operators who would gain from an AI-driven analytics stack. But I also think that nimble tier 3, tier 4 operators, such as MVNOs, all will need to transform their decision analytics stack. And that's where I think cloud-based multi-tenant systems will come into play. An environment where vendors like us can create reference use cases and inspire telcos to build their own use cases will all be very important. So just to again answer your question, definitely tier 1s, operators doing 5G transformation, operators doing cloud transformation are a prime target. But I also think the long tail of telcos, as you would call it, the tier 3s, tier 4s will benefit, but perhaps nimble, starts with small footprint, start with assistance from vendors like us.
Great. So Rohit, we're out of time, but that's been a great discussion. And this is a good topic for telcos, because, as you say, we're at the start of the journey, but when you think about the potential, it's huge. So I think we talk a lot about network investments and how huge those investments are, and there's a lot we can do around analytics, regardless of which G we're on. So that's very, very exciting.
Absolutely, Mark. I mean, in my mind, I'm absolutely convinced intense digitization, the impending rollout of 5G services at scale, and AI in decision analytics has the power to propel telcos into league of hyperscalers.
Yeah. So I think it's probably a how-to conversation rather than a what-to conversation. So the how-to is the challenging part. Right. Thank you so much for your time. Lovely to talk to you. Hope to speak to you again soon.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Mark. Thanks for having me. Thank you.